trying to keep the communication going. Dialogue collects that information. Churches you're talking to, pastors you may be talking to, and then we have a good idea of where we can help to advocate what's open, what fits your particular vocational calling and trajectory. So keep in mind that even as these students are having these conversations with churches and going through this process, we have one last session together in our class, and at the end of this month, they also have to continue to write their papers, take their exams, all of that, go to class. And it's more than just another class, is it not? Yeah, because this is why they came. So please keep them in prayer as you keep them down and as you think about the process. That's the way you can advocate for them. One last, this is a new development. Ashley Ritter, who is the assistant director, I believe, at the Career Development and Internships Office, which is right across the way there. They're actually incorporating graduate students, including seminary students, into their resourcing. So they have opportunities for resume writing. They have different workshops on interviewing, all of these sorts of helps and support. They also get job listings. So if you're not ECC and you're looking, and they get ministry job listings as well, and you can go on and you can sign into their system and have access to all of their job listings. It can include internships as well. But just so you know, that's a resource for you. If you want to know more about that, you can talk to Ashley across the way. We're going to incorporate her into our orientation from now on, because this is a new development. But that's a really great resource for us, and they want to be a resource for the whole university, which includes you all. So get to know her. I think she'll be a really great advocate for you and a help as you get close to completing your program here. Questions on that? All right, that is all I have for you today. Stephen Chester is going to come up and share some things about the curriculum and other things.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Yeah, I think what Deb said about calls to ministry is particularly important. You know, in the last few years, we've been conscious that, entirely understandably, students in the call to ministry process are nervous, you know, anxious about the future, wondering if there's going to be a call. And of course, the primary person you need to talk to about all of that is God the Holy Spirit. But, what the statistics tell us is that although it may take a little time, the vast majority of graduates actually do finish up placed in ministry. So, you know, overall, there's a positive story to tell there. And so I just want to encourage anybody who's at that stage in their seminary career you know, the experience of classes have gone before you is that yes, it may have taken a little while, but even in the midst of a recession, the vast majority of our students have actually found a placement in ministry where they can serve. So that's that part of things. Moving on, I've just got 3 or 4 things I want to highlight. The first really relates to national events over the last 6 to 9 months. I think in the second half of 2014, anybody who was in the United States was very conscious of the national discussion that was going on about race and the justice system in the aftermath of the incident in Ferguson and various other incidents in other places. And as a faculty, we became aware that a significant number of our students were engaging in that debate and that discussion in positive and important ways. And we wanted to be part of that ourselves, and we also wanted to affirm what all of you were doing. And so the faculty got together, and just before Christmas, every student received by email a faculty statement concerning the issue. The text is here. And so what we said was, in response to the recent debates in the nation concerning race in the justice system, arising from tragic incidents in Ferguson and elsewhere, and noting and supporting the engagement of many of you in actions calling for just treatment of all for all, the undersigned members of MPTS faculty are issuing the following statement. And then I won't read through all of it, but we tried to put together a statement that represented a biblical and theological perspective on this issue. Obviously, if you want to talk about a biblical and theological perspective on these issues, you know, something much longer might be necessary to give a full view. But we wanted to say something that was reasonably short in compass, but also said something important. And we wanted to make sure that we said something that said exactly what we wanted it to say. You know, in the debate where there was so much misspeaking going on, we wanted to be sure that we were saying exactly what we intended. So we took our time and we crafted the statement, and it went out to all students by email before Christmas. So, you know, all of you should have the opportunity to see that through your North Park email account. But what I wanted to say in particular today is, having done that, we're conscious now that it only went to our own student body by email. We're also, in the next few weeks, going to look for other places where we might put and publicize this statement. And there's a particular reason for that, which is, as I'm sure those of you, you know, I'm sure everybody's conscious, that although it's still cropping up, it's cropping up in the media less often. You know, in all media stories, there's a kind of news cycle. But just because a news cycle has moved on doesn't mean that an important issue has moved on. The issues are still there. And so we felt like this might be a good time to think about other places in which we might put this in order to make our contribution to keeping that discussion going. So first of all, I want to tell you about that. Are people familiar with the statement? Did you all see it and receive it, or would it actually be helpful to read through it? You've all seen it. Okay, that's good. Okay. Well, what I should say, I suppose, is any questions about that before I move on? Okay. The second thing I want to do is to celebrate a piece of good news for one member of our faculty in particular. Max Lee will have a sabbatical next year, but Max has succeeded with a grant application to the Louisville Institute and has received from them a major research award, which will allow him to turn his sabbatical semester into a sabbatical year. So Max will be away for the whole of 2015-16, and he will be working on this project, Food, Sex and Entertainment, Paul and the Epicureans on the Ethics of Pleasure. Now, that serious historical study, that's about Paul in relation to ancient philosophy on subjects like food, sex, and entertainment. However, the Louisville Institute, their particular concern in awarding grant funding is to support projects that can be of benefit to the life of the contemporary church. And so, although there's a very important historical component to this, this won't just be a straight historical study. Max will be exploring the relevance of his historical research for the contemporary church. And so I think it's going to be a really worthwhile project. It's a major achievement for Max, and I just wanted to let you all know about that, and that we all are celebrating that with him and looking forward to what he's going to produce as the result of this research award. So that's a piece of really good news. I just grab my agenda to make sure I don't miss anything. The third thing, there are two more things I want to speak about, but the third thing I want to speak about is just a couple of new curricular developments, which is two new certificates. First of all, we have a certificate in congregational vitality, which is being offered in conjunction with the Congregational Vitality Department of the ECC and John Wenrick, who heads up that department. And this is a 12 credit hour ministry certificate The first class is taking place in the reading week in March. That first class can be taken simply as an elective, or you can use it as the first class in the certificate. And the certificate can either be taken standalone, or at 12 credit hours it can be incorporated into a degree program using your elective choices. But this is an exciting new opportunity. It gives people the opportunity to go deeper into this particular aspect of ministry. And we think it's important both because Congregational Vitality has done wonderful work with DCC and with other churches, and therefore, the ultimate goal is to benefit the life and the mission of Christ Church. But we also think it's important in terms of helping to equip students. How do you see your future ministry, or how do you see your current ministry if you're already with a church? Are you going to be, or are you in a context where to have some real depth of knowledge and depth of experience in this particular area will be of real value to you? That's the kind of question the certificate is designed to answer. It will be offered on a 2-year cycle. So anybody who began the certificate this March will be able to complete it within 2 years. And we're just very excited about the whole process and wanted you to be aware of that. The other certificate is looking a little further into the future, certificate in church planting. We've been, again, in collaboration with the ECC. There's a new certificate in church planting. This year, anybody who took the certificate would only be able to do it if they were already approved for church planting by the ECC. So it will be a closed pilot first year. But from next year, we're hoping that the program is going to be available to anybody. And again, it's a 12-credit program that can be either incorporated into a degree program through electives, or could be taken as a standalone certificate. So 2 opportunities with focused ministry certificates for people to develop real expertise in particular areas, if that's either where they're engaged already or where they feel they're called to be in ministry in the future. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing is just looking towards the fall. As you all know, faculty worked for a number of years on revising the MDiv curriculum, and a new MDiv curriculum will be beginning in 2015-16. That means for all of you who are existing students, you entered under a previous catalogue. For some of you, it will make most sense to complete under that catalogue. For some of you, it may make most sense to transfer to the new catalogue. And I need to say as well, I think, although this was an MDiv curriculum revision, because our programs share required classes, although the changes are smaller, a change to the MDiv is necessarily also a change to all our other degree programs. So whoever you are as a seminary student, this involves you, and what we want to do now is just give you some basic information about how that's going to unfold and how you're going to be advised over the next few months about what's the best option for you. And to do that, I'm going to hand over briefly to Alex and to Eva.
The curriculum switch over, there are a number of steps to make sure that we do this well and that we communicate it effectively. So part of that is going to be going through each student program and looking at what you've completed thus far and whether that aligns best with the catalog you started under, or if that would mean moving into the newer curriculum, and that would be more beneficial for you. So that's going to be a lot of our work for the semester, and there are a number of steps that we need to take prior to that. So if you're sitting there wondering, wow, that sounds like an awful lot of work, you are right. And if you're also wondering, how can we help? How can we help? I've got the answer to your question. that is number one, don't panic. We are going to get to you. The students that we're going to make a priority for that are ones who are approaching graduation sooner. So mostly people who started prior to 2013. That group of people we're going to try to get recommendations to before fall registration starts on April 6th? Somewhere over there? April 6th? Everyone else will be after that, but you will hear from us before the end of the semester. So if we get to registration before you've heard from us, please register so you don't lose a spot in the class for what you think you might need. And then once we do communicate, if there's any adjustments that need to be made, you can either switch your schedule on your own or let us know. We can help you do that. Another thing that you can do is email Sem Academic Serve with questions, because our lovely TA Melissa would be happy to help you, and she could probably do that much quicker than we can at this point. We may even close the office for a couple days. We will notify everyone if that's something that we plan on doing. We're going to go hide somewhere where we're not close to you. If you're feeling like you're being avoided, you are. Good cause. And we will be in touch. But definitely feel free to email us any questions to the general email box. And just be on the lookout for any notifications.
Don't panic. With burning questions that just has to be answered before registration, email us in Academic Serve. And Melissa, if she can't answer it, she'll forward it to us. But there's plenty of time for us to get back to you or for you to make changes to these changes.
Any questions while we're up here?
You guys intentionally dress like twins today?
Yes, coordinated.
Is there a space or a time that you'll know when the new revision of the curriculum and what is required would be available for us to see?
Yes, actually, we have on that, let's see, sort of brief timeline. Hoping to get that up by the end of February. So it will definitely be up before fall registration. You'll probably have about a month before fall registration is open.
Sorry, what is that?
When will the new curriculum be posted? The requirement. Actually, we might know the requirements up before that, but we won't have the fall schedule up until then.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And is that about the time you said that you were going to have communicated to everybody about whether they should stay with the current or switch over?
So we'll be focusing on people who started before 2013, before registration. There's just no way that we'll be able to get to everybody before registration. But you will hear from us before the end of the semester. I think our goal for completing all of the student audits will be the first week of May, which is the last week of the semester. That's us trying to be realistic. I wish I had better information about that. But going through the steps, that's really
Can you encourage us who started in fall of 2014 that would most likely be best for almost all of us to be in the new curriculum? I think you sent us. Just to avoid, yeah.
But it can be very individualized if you have transfer credit or you have standing. But if you just came in clean with nothing and you're MDiv, probably it will be better. Go to the new curriculum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They really are dressed like twins, aren't they? There was an even more embarrassing Sunday when Soon Chan and I were both helping serve communion at church, and we both turned up dressed completely identical. Just to reiterate the last point, it is very individualized, but what we'll be doing in auditing is deciding what's in your best interests and trying to work with you to determine that. It just depends on how it works out, depending on when you entered, depending on what advanced standing or transfer credit you bought. It could be in your own interest to remain on the existing curriculum, because actually, despite the fact that it's longer, if you're an MDiv student, pattern of classes that you already have means that you can complete it more quickly. Or it might be in your interest to change to the new curriculum, because that will enable you to graduate sooner. And then there's the added question of, well, what classes do you feel that you really need to take between now and when you finish, according to how your vocational interests have developed. So all of that needs to be factored in, and what Alex and Deidre will be doing by the end of the semester is giving each student the baseline information they need in order to make a really informed decision about what you should do. I forgot to ask when I was talking about the certificates whether there are any questions about that, so I'll give another opportunity now. Just say that any questions about anything that I've covered at all that anyone would like to raise. Charles?
How are the certificates going to be presented? Are they going to be on campus only? Are they going to be online classes?
They're all going to be primarily intensive classes. So for each certificate, there are 3 required classes and an elective. And the elective will be from a menu of existing North Park Seminary classes, and that might include a variety of formats. Okay? But the required classes themselves, each of those will be an intensive class. And with the certificate in congregational vitality, the pattern we've developed is the reading weeks in March and October. That will be when these classes will be offered.
And they'll be Chicago, right?
And they'll be Chicago. The church planting certificate, the preliminary schedule is more complicated because, of course, church planters are traveling from all over the country, and from the ECC's perspective, there's a need for some class offerings in other places. So some of those, all of those required classes will be intensive. Some of them won't be in Chicago. But if you're a main campus student, what you should know is that all of those classes will come up in Chicago at least once every 2 years. Okay, so the cycle's been developed so that if there was a main campus student wanting to incorporate that certificate into their degree program, they would have to accommodate when the classes come around, but there would be an opportunity to get every class that you need within a 2-year period.
The church planning intensive class was in January.
Yes.
Is there an opportunity for someone who took that but has not been assessed yet by Board of Services to kind of retro that after you go through the class?
As I understand it, yes. So not this year because the rest of the classes are only open to those who've been accepted. But if you did the elective class in January, there's 2 ways you can use that. That is the first class in the certificate sequence. So you can either simply use that as a standalone elective because you were interested in a foundational class in church planting, or if you decided subsequently to take the certificate beginning in 2016, you would already have the first class completed. Yeah, you wouldn't have to repeat the same class in order to take the certificate.
And you would work with the Seminary Academic Services Office too.
If you're already a degree seeker.
If you're already a degree seeker, you just work with them to add that certificate to your program.
Yeah, there's an important distinction. If you're not already a seminary student and you apply for a certificate, then you apply through the admissions office. But if you are already a seminary student in a degree program, there is a simple form that you can get from Seminary Academic Services where you simply collect the form, indicate that you wish to add a certificate, have the faculty member who's the responsible, sign to approve that, and return it to Seminary Academic Services, then you're registered for the certificate. And we think that's going to be a step forward because up until now, that procedure actually is going to apply to all certificates for people who are already in degree programs, except for the cohort certificates. Yeah, where you do have to apply separately. So if you wanted to do certificate in spiritual direction or certificate in urban ministry, that is a separate application process because of their cohort programs. But all the other certificates, if you're a degree-seeking student, you can indicate that you're part of that program through simply completing a form, having it signed, and returning it to Seminary Academic Services. We think that's a big improvement because up until now in university records, it's only the people who've entered as certificate students that have really been coded as that in university records, and you know, we've had to capture all that as people who've approached graduation. Now, if you actually register for a certificate as a degree-seeking student, you'll be in the system as also being a certificate student. So that's a great question. So if you are taking a certificate as part of your degree, whatever that certificate is, please do come and talk to Seminary Academic Services and collect the form and get yourself properly registered for that.
To jump off that, hypothetically, say you're taking the congregational vitality class this spring, but you graduate, so you're not a seminary student anymore, but you would be interested in the certificate, of the completing it then later. Would you then have to register through academic or?
You would then, yes, you would then need to go through admissions, but you would still be able to count the one class towards the certificate. Yeah.
Do you get discounts after you graduate?
There is a 20% alumni discount. It's not a lot, it's 20%. Yes.
Yeah, and I think within the first cycle of 3 classes for the certificate, there is a tuition discount built in. So we can't guarantee that's going to continue, but if you apply and enter the certificate program within the first cycle of classes, which for the certificate in congregational vitality will be this March until next March, then you will get a tuition discount just because of the certificate in congregational vitality. If you were paying for that separately from your degree program. If it's within your degree program, then your financial aid package applies as usual. But for something that's outside the degree program, then that discount can count. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Just want to really celebrate a few things that have been alluded to. One is that the tremendous amount of work by Steve and Academic Students Services and Student Services on all the degree revisions, all to get to where we are. When I tell other seminary deans that we're doing, degree revisions, MDiv revision, all of that, it's like their head drops and I'll pray for you. And it actually has been quite a wonderful collaborative process by the faculty. There were some difficult conversations for sure, but it's gone extremely well. So the folks who've done that work, I would really like to affirm this news. So. That we have a very strong program in field education, and most schools who have shortened the MDiv have all but ruled out significant field ed, and we've kept the same level of field ed. So that's another nuanced part of this project, and I want to celebrate that as well. Also want to recognize that we have met and exceeded all of our enrollment goals under AA's leadership. They have all been part of that, a nice uptick, particularly in distance and net students of recent. So we're grateful for all of those efforts. A couple other newsy items. One is that we're continuing the program of with the Lilly Endowment on the financial health of our future ministers, and we're getting ready. So the component that you've all experienced is the financial counseling done by Steve Allison. That's rolling through all classes now, and twice a year. We're one of a few seminaries that have been able to pull it off because of our partnership with Covenant Trust Company. They're providing that as a service to you. The other aspect has been to add some points in the curriculum. We've done that in vocational excellence and in the leadership course, where there'll be financial acuity instruction in that. And then there'll be workshops each year, rolling out next year, day-long workshops that will be part of the field ed experience as well. So that's going along quite nicely. The third portion of it is to come up with a new innovative way to fund theological education. And what we're looking at is to create, with the National Covenant Properties and a few significant donors, to create a pooled resource where we'd be able to loan, we would discount as far down as we can discount. And then we would, all other student lending could be done through this private source, interest-free. And with very rough numbers of, upon graduation, you might have, with discounts and other incentives we bake into it, you might have a $20,000 debt for your seminary education, but interest-free, that could be paid off at about $250 a month in anywhere from 5 to 7 years. So it could make this whole thing very doable. It's very innovative. We're going to go to ATS and talk to them about it, and we're going to go to the Lilly Endowment and see if they want to help fund it further. But anyway, that probably won't roll out until fall of 16, but we will be asking your help on how to look at this, how to market it. Is there enough incentive in this from a student perspective? So there will be some focus groups coming. Yes. And we're not ruling out that there could be a different program for student debt beyond that. But this is a going forward project that I'm speaking of right now. Okay. So there's an update there. The other thing I wanted to talk about for just a few minutes this morning was to celebrate some things that happened at the midwinter. First of all, we had our second Distinguished Alumni Service Award at the midwinter, and an 04 graduate of the seminary, Marisol, I can't say her name, I'm so sorry. Tell me somebody to pronounce it. Marisol Martinez, I think I got that right. Was the recipient of the award. She has done grassroots organizing in Mexico City and human trafficking. She's done significant work with families and children on the margins in Mexico City. She's an active leader in the Covenant Church in Mexico, and she's just been elected president of our churches of Mexico, the first woman president of any of our sister denominations. So that was a great moment. Now, the comic relief of me presenting the award to her, she was like 4'11". You know, it's bad enough when David Parkin and I stand by each other, but you can go online and see how. That's all anybody wanted to talk about. Did you read her bio? Did you get what No, that was really funny, Dave. So, anyway, it was a highlight of the midwinter of sorts. The other thing was, if you looked at the whole panel of work that our faculty did at the midwinter, it was significant, from workshops to keynoting to all of that. And I really want to celebrate Sun Chan Ra's morning address and the call to lament over the issue of race, and how deeply significant I think that sermon was. We had great preaching all week. Eugene Cho earlier in the week. I'm going to miss somebody. There were other good things, but we did a lot of work at the midwinter, and significant work for the church. And I want to celebrate that, and I want to lift up those highlights. So it was a good midwinter. There was also a great deal of conversation about human sexuality in the midwinter. I want to make a few comments on that as well. First of all, we have yet, and I don't think we accomplished it at this midwinter, we have yet to have a good, transparent, and safe conversation on sexuality. And as a covenant leader, I take some responsibility for that. I've been in this conversation since '96. I've been part of all documents written for the church, 96 and on. And we're still in deficit, and I'm not certain the mix of a petition and of an off-site panel, while I think things said there were important, I think Michelle's paper was an important piece, I'm not certain that's the context and the way for us to move forward on this issue. I'm just saying this, my perspective as a leader. You as students, here's some observations I'll make, and I'll risk being a little bit controversial and maybe annoying you slightly, excuse me, and that is, social media is not the place for this conversation. And I would really encourage you not to be part of that. It's not safe for you as you're going to go out into the church and seek positions to be part of a social media-based conversation on this topic. Churches will find that. They'll rule you out in a very callous and unnuanced way, but I'm just saying that. So if you would ask me this personally, I would tell you exactly the same thing. You're going to have to do what you feel your conscience wants you to do. But I've read the social media stuff pretty carefully. And I know a lot of the people in the conversation and the decisions that have been made behind the scenes, and you are not getting an accurate picture of those discussions and those decisions on social media. You're simply not. And I'm not quite certain how we can get to right now that better and safer and more transparent conversation, but I think we need to be praying about that and looking ahead to that. Want to say a couple words about dissent and faithful dissent. That's a lot of the conversation right now. And when you're seeking, I'm sorry for those of you who aren't moving towards ECC because this is a little bit of an insider conversation. But if you're seeking to serve in ECC and your own personal belief is different from the church on this issue, human sexuality, or other issues, you do have the right. You do have the right of faithful dissent. Not all beliefs have to line up perfectly in order for you to come forward in the church for ministry. But I do want to make it clear, when we take vows, when we are endorsed for ministry by a body, we are called to represent the discerned, common, communal faith of that body, not simply our own opinions. In the preaching office, in the teaching office, one of our predecessors, no longer with us, taught preaching here, was a covenant leader and pastor, Wesley Nelson, on speaking about the preaching and teaching office, said, "When I stand in the pulpit to preach, I don't simply preach my own personal faith. That's not enough. I'm not enough. I preach the faith of the Christian church, the discerned faith, the communal faith. And I pray earnestly that I too might believe it." And I think it's that type of humility that we have to come into these vocations and take on the role of preaching and teaching. So there's no exacting definition. Here is the boundary of faithful dissent, and here is the boundary where dissent becomes egregious and harmful to the body on this issue. But I can tell you this, in your preaching and teaching responsibilities in the church, you're called to represent first what the church believes. If you differ from that, no one wants you to lie. No one wants you to hide that. But you have to, your obligation is to the church endorsing you. So there has to be a sense of proportionality about this. And you can't speak for the whole. The whole has discerned this and come to a place of practice and belief on this, and you may not fully agree with it, but that's where it is, and that's the majority of your obligation. If asked, we don't want no one to lie. You can say that, but to hold it proportionally and to not speak publicly in a way that denigrates the church is really the best instruction I can give you. You can disagree. You can point out other resources. But there has to be a sense of proportionality to that. And this would be true of congregations you're called to as well. So I know I've created more questions than I've answered by bringing this up. But There is a nice piece on social media that Rebecca Eklund and a few other pastors in the Covenant wrote, and it's not about human sexuality and social media, it's about the right use of social media in vocational ministry. And that's on the Covenant website, and I would recommend that to you as a resource. So there, I'll stop, and if you want to ask a few questions, please do.
So is there a plan going forward, or you're working that out, or to deal with some of these issues in a more discussion?
I don't sit at all the same tables I used to sit at in denominational leadership, so I'm not going to overspeak there. But yes, there's working on new resources, additional conversations, helping to clarify faithful dissent, all of that. Yes.
In relationship to how the seminary falls under the umbrella of the ECC,
right?
How is the faculty and administration maintaining that relationship, like creating spaces here for people to engage in that dialogue, be both respectful in the way that you've spoken of it and proportionate,
right?
But to be able to speak with some prophetic language.
Right. Currently it comes up in the curriculum in some key places in New Testament and in theology. I think we're in deficit there. I think there probably should be a course, an elective course on the topic. Stephen and I are talking about that and how we would form and shape that. In terms of the faculty is under the same obligation that I just spoke to be clear about where our church is. We are the teaching body and office of the church. There are faculty members that are at a different place, but their first obligation is to the teaching of the church and the proportionality of that. And to my knowledge, what happens here in the classroom and how we go about that's not an issue. I think our faculty is well aware of their obligations and stays within that. Again, to my knowledge, I'm not in every class, all those things. But could we do better here on our campus in this conversation? Yes, and that would be our intention. Yes.
You stated at Midwinter that there would be resources coming, and they would have hoped to have them at the conference itself. But they're delayed in that, and so I'm just curious if once they obtain the resources, it will be distributed or available to students as well.
Yeah, I again, not directly in that conversation, kind of around the edges of it, but I've been in this conversation about resources for a long time, and I'll just say it lacks some genuineness in in this sense. Folks want resources for wherever they are on the spectrum. They don't want broad or general resources. They want something to build their case. And the church really can't be part of that. It should articulate its own position well. And then on the pastoral side, and the congregational side, that is so case by case, pastoral discernment, congregational discernment based. I think the best we can do is say, here's how to have the hard conversation. Here's the way to resource it. But the irony is the denominational leaders are going to go Google the topic. Not to be too, but they're going to do what you can do right now in terms of the broad resources, the many varying voices in the church out there. Now, is there some missing pieces in the research? Yes. The relationship between spirituality and sexuality is a grand missing piece. Do we as a church have a thick enough marriage ethic, period, for traditional marriage? We don't make a great case for marriage, period. Do we speak coherently and well to the office of singleness? No. To me, if you're asking me, where does the resourcing need to go? It needs to go in those areas, and that we could have richer and better resources. Yes.
sooner than later? Or?
Well, just to be perfectly blunt, Stephen and I agreed that we were going to do it yesterday afternoon. So, that's all I got. And it's not that we haven't talked about it or haven't said we really should do this, that's been rolling, but we said yesterday we need to do this and we're going to do it.
Are you going to open it up to like just even the student body, just kind of like maybe add suggestions?
In creating it?
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts? Questions? Yes?
What's your hope for us as a student body is how we would start to engage this conversation while we're here on campus or distant students?
I think my hope would be, here's my experience as a pastor, as a denominational leader, that, and these are very crass terms, so forgive me, but the far right and the far left dominate the conversation. And they talk across the rest of the church. And far left wants to change the position, the far right wants to slam the door shut, and it's a done, closed issue. And so every call for a conversation that comes out of one of those polar positions is really somewhat disingenuous. They don't want a conversation, they want to change it. They don't really want a conversation, they want to slam the door shut. So that leaves the rest of us nowhere in the conversation. So if we were going to have a good conversation here, it would be not from those polar oppositional points, but from, well, here's where our church is, here's what we can do now, where we are, here's where we need to keep moving towards this community, and here are some good and healthy ways to do that. Yeah. I don't accept at all that you have to, that you can't hold a traditional view of marriage in the office of singleness and have ministry in the gay and lesbian community. That is simply not true. And in fact, the people in the ECC currently doing the most effective ministry to that community are people that I know of, I'll qualify it totally, that I know of, that I rub shoulders with, are people that hold a traditional position. So there's no excuse like, well, I can't do it because of the church. That's simply not true. Yeah, I'll stop there. Okay? Good? Everyone happy? I'd like to pray for our community and we'll dismiss. Gracious God, thank you for this afternoon. Thank you for good reports about hard work on the curriculum, good reports on new certificates, good reports on enrollment, and we're grateful. We're grateful to be part of this community. We know there's areas of our life, our ministry, our preparation, our formation that need to be improved, and we seek to do that as well. And we seek to be faithful and good stewards of this place, its mission, and the opportunity it has. So bless our students, bless our staff and our faculty as we do this work together. In Jesus' name. Amen.